In at number 10, Reed Richards. Not too many people view Reed Richards as a scary superhero, at least at face value. However, if you look into what he is truly capable of, you'll take a second glance real quick. Reed has one of the highest levels of intelligence in the MCU, yet despite this, many fans view him as more of a mad scientist than anything else. For example, the time that he and others cloned Thor and sent him to attack the Anti-Superhuman Registration Act heroes. That may sound like an act of defense, but in reality, the clone was killing superheroes that were actually close friends of not just the Fantastic Four, but Reed Richards as well. On top of that, Mr. Fantastic's ability to convert the mass of his entire body into a highly malleable state at will could be used to do some pretty heinous things if he ever wanted to. Things we wouldn't wish on our worst enemies. In at number 9, the Inhumans. With all of these behind the scenes deals over ownership of certain heroes to be used for the big screen, many fans were disappointed to learn that essentially the bland Inhumans would be the new moniker for mutants in the MCU. This has led many fans to not help but think that the Inhumans are being crammed in our face in lieu of not getting the rights to the X-Men. The team appeared in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2 and Marvel Comics Infinity and Inhumanity. It was here that it became apparent that the Inhumans should be viewed as a threat versus our salvation. When Thanos invaded Earth looking for his son Thane, the Inhuman leader Black Bolt unleashed massive clouds of Terrigen mist into the Earth's atmosphere. This mist soon settled into two enormous clouds that mixed with the atmosphere, transforming them into a substance that was toxic for all mutants. In at number 8, the Hulk. There are so many problems with the Hulk's character that it's difficult to pin down just a few for this point. First and foremost, this scary superhero has had a myriad of different actors attempt to properly portray the Green Machine, and just when you think they got it, boom, casting change. It's been years since the Hulk had his own solo film, and for good reason. The character was entirely absent when needed most in Avengers Infinity War, and then Endgame turned him into even more of a joke with his odd new hipster Hulk appearance. Regardless of how much fans hated this, the Hulk still remains as one of the more terrifying superheroes in the MCU. His power is virtually unmatched, and when his anger gets out of control, he only becomes harder to defeat. Not exactly a superhero that you'd want to double cross anytime soon. In at number 7, Iron Man. Besides the tired shtick that we've watched Tony Stark do over and over again throughout the MCU, it's his influence as a billionaire weapon manufacturer that makes him both hated and scary. The MCU attempted to move him away from his roots of creating weapons that ultimately land in the wrong hands, killing innocents, by making him more of a mentor for other heroes, but you can never undo the previous films. The cherry on top though was the spawning of Ultron, who took Stark's words for peace and showed us the true evil within those words, only the way that an unfeeling AI can do. The worst part is that in order to defeat this big mistake, he had to create Vision, yet another uncontrolled godlike entity that could have just as easily only made things worse. As smart as Tony Stark is, it's that enormous ego that people not only hate, but are scared of as well, and rightfully so. In at number 6, Shazam. For Billy Batson, it's not just his juvenile nature that audiences didn't care for, it's the fact that there has been a number of changes made to the character itself. People engaged in a heated debate online as to whether or not he was Shazam or Captain Marvel. Either way, he's like a goofy, uncoordinated Superman that just got his powers. Despite all of the name changes and general buffoonery, the character of Shazam is without a doubt scary. He's the ultimate what-if kind of character. I mean, they've literally bestowed a teenager with divine empowerment and the physical stature of an adult. The result is absolute carelessness on the part of someone who probably never had to deal with such dire consequences for their actions in their entire life. Sure, he saved that bus full of people in the film, but he's also the one who caused the accident in the first place, making Shazam both hated and feared by those who ride the public transit system in Philadelphia. In at number 5, Green Lantern. Hal Jordan is by far no one's favorite Green Lantern. Everything from the dumb version of Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin to the awful portrayal by Ryan Reynolds, fans have had quite the distaste for Green Lantern, leading many fans of DC to even dislike the Lego movie version of the character as well. He didn't even make the cut for Super Friends or the Justice League. That means his own friends had to save the world and opted for not calling him in. Even still, we should not forget how powerful Hal as the Green Lantern truly is. His Green Lantern ring mastery gives Hal the ability to bring anything into existence just from thinking about it. This could mean world-ending weapons appearing from nothing and being used in collaboration with his superhuman strength. As much as we dislike him, it's probably a good thing that he's on our side. In at number 4, Aquaman. Aquaman has been the center of internet and comic book fan scrutiny for years. With so many iterations of the character being drawn up and scrapped, fans have relentlessly mocked Aquaman. Jason Momoa's portrayal of the character added a few more layers, but what's worse than being a boring superhero is hating him for being so overpowered. Public service announcements about boating safety aside, the King of the Deep is one scary superhero. Despite being born half human, he has a real distrust and hatred for humans. He almost saves them as a way of proving that he's above them. In at number 3, Superman. Now here's a classic superhero that we would never ever want to get on the bad side of, yet regardless of the feats of strength that Kal-El has shown, he still gets a ton of hate. Zack Snyder's film portrayed him as the superhero who sort of knew that he was awesome but didn't owe humanity anything, and throughout the comic books his obnoxious rebrands have been the subject of much disdain. All of that aside, it's this boring label that he gets smacked with repeatedly that truly holds his character back. There isn't much complexity to the story of Superman, and because the majority of us understand his origins, we often take him for granted as a superhero. Even in Batman vs Superman, many fans wondered why exactly we needed this type of film and really what good it would do for his reputation. What we saw was that Superman is still a force to be reckoned with, and again, despite our hatred for, a superhero that we should constantly be in fear of. In at number 2, Ghost Rider. It wasn't just the fact that the Ghost Rider movie was played by Nicolas Cage that made fans hate the character, it was the watered down portrayal that truly upset the fans. Ghost Rider was a character designed for the express purpose of being this edgy R-rated superhero, but that's just not what we got. Even the sequel for the film felt like a cry for help. They just can't let him go, and for good reason. He's terrifying, and the battle of someone being controlled by an evil force but attempting to use it for good is an inherently compelling narrative. This is why we saw Marvel jump ship on the Johnny Blaze version and push forward in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where we saw the Robbie Reyes version of the character making an appearance. Hopefully the new one will be better. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Cyclops. Scott Summers. Where do we even begin with this white bread, whiny, child-endangering superhero? I guess those last 3 remarks are a good place to start. In the eyes of some fans, Cyclops is their favorite team leader, but for many his creepy flirting with teenage Jean Grey was enough for fans to, well, hate his guts. As a result, Scott has been the center and main recipient of a ton of backlash from comic book fans. All of that hatred aside though, Cyclops is without a doubt scary powerful. His optic blasts have gone haywire before, and when he's not leveling cities with his eyes alone, he can be quite the jerk. His bland nature would never make him complex enough to become a villain, but even if he did, I bet his motivations for destroying the world would be Wolverine swooping up his lady.
Number 10. Fight Man. So Fight Man is designed to be a character that everyone hates. He's meant to be brash, annoying, and awful. His one-shot comic demonstrates this perfectly, which I mostly want to tell you about because the tagline is "one shot is all he needs," which is so corny yet memorable, it's infuriating. Fight Man regularly destroys the city, injures the very people he's trying to help, is broke, so is constantly trying to sell merch that no one wants. He had to move back in with his parents and he doesn't even appreciate them. He had 15 sidekicks that he got killed, and the whole city eventually sues him. So yes, the hate, we have consensus, deserved. He's a terrible hero. He gets the job done, but at tremendous cost to the city. He also has Freakazoid's haircut. Fight Man is very 90s. He's meant to be a joke, and some of them do land. I think my favorite is when one of his villains comes down to the legal offices where he's trying to deal with his ex-wife, trying to get out of alimony, breaks down the wall and is all, "You better come out here or she's dead." And Fight Man is like, "Okay, fine, do it." So his villain goes, "Oh, okay, let's just have a normal fight then." The 90s was way more self-aware than people give it credit for. Number 9. Guy Gardner. So Guy Gardner is a Green Lantern. He first debuted in Green Lantern Volume 2, number 59 back in 1968, and he wasn't always the brash jerk he is known as today. That happened in the 80s when his character was completely revamped from, well, mild-mannered and not really being used to a, and I quote, jingoistic parody of an ultra-macho red-blooded American male. Quote time. When I took over Green Lantern, John Stewart was the GL, but everybody expected Hal Jordan to come back and relegate John to backup duty once again. I decided that John deserved better. So I asked myself, why can't there be 2 GLs? And that led to, why can't there be more than 2? That eventually led to the GL Corps, but along the way I decided to resurrect the lost GL, Guy Gardner, who had been terminally bland and then brain damaged, a completely useless character as things stood. I was being a good soldier, trying to help my friend Dick Giordano sell the book, and it turned out to be the second biggest mistake of my entire career, because ever since, DC has claimed that since Joe and I didn't create the original Guy Gardner, our completely new take counts for nothing. But the damage was done. Guy was the jerk of every team he was on, knocked out by Batman with one punch. They've toned it down in recent years, but he's still considered hot-headed and a bit of a loose cannon, and well, rude. So it's understandable why some people hate him, particularly in canon. Still not over that him, Ice, and Superman love triangle. Lots of people like how Guy is because it makes him different. He definitely stands out. But when you need a hero, do you need someone who's gonna moon you and make fun of his allies who are doing poorly? He'll get the job done in a pinch. Hey, when you pull a massive character 180 like that and make it something other characters react to, it lands for some people and not for others. Number 8, Star Fox. Now whenever I put Star Fox on a list, people have strong feelings. And some people think I'm talking about the game for a moment, just a brief flash. Star Fox first debuted in Iron Man number 55 back in 1973. He is Eros, brother of Thanos, and while people didn't think a lot about his pheromone date rape powers at first, this would become a plot point. Star Fox would be put on trial for sexual assault when married women came forward claiming that he had been using his powers on them to seduce them. The panels are quite horrifying. They don't even remember, and he's all, "You're welcome, you just banged a superhero." He's being defended by Jennifer Walters, aka the She-Hulk, but then she starts to suspect that he used his powers like this on her. And you know what? She's not right. She just has poor judgment. Star Fox? Really, Jennifer? But she has to Hulk out and get him mind probed to find this out, which also mind probing, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But what he did do was he did make her fall in love with and marry John Jameson. You see what they did there? This was a way to retcon another marriage out of existence. Comics hate marriage unless you're reading Sue. But wait, this was all Thanos' fault. He implanted a memory in his mind that made him unstable, and that's why he used his powers this way. So, not his fault. Yeah, that solved nothing. And whenever you make a character a rapist like this, you give the next writer an impossible task. A curveball, because in canon the characters don't want anything to do with him, and outside of it, people don't really want to either. It's a hard thing to get behind, especially with such a weak sauce explanation. False memories from a Thanos clone made him do it. If the memory is fake, we cannot litigate. He's still being sidelined because of this. People get mad about people not liking Star Fox for this, because they feel like he was a good character who got dealt a bad arc, or also because of insert current year comics. Let's leave Star Fox alone for now. Number 7, Deadpool. So Deadpool is a fan favorite with many people, but in universe, other people can't stand the merc with a mouth. They think he's insane. He has few friends. But you know whose friendship he didn't have to bribe? Cable. He had to bend over backwards for Spidey's, but that is neither here nor there. Most people in the Marvel universe find Deadpool annoying at best and dangerous at worst. Deadpool can be dark and he kills regularly and is up for hire. Just because, oh, he was married and oh, he had/has a daughter. Kids are always just one reboot away from being retconned out of existence. Less so at Marvel. At Marvel, it's more likely they're going to be sent outside the timeline to be hyper-aged. Again, Cable. At different points of Deadpool's history, he didn't even have his memory in order. He couldn't remember killing. In his alternate universe stories, he's killed all of the Marvel universe, even breaking the fourth wall to come for the writers. He can be abrasive, intrusive, and hinder rescue situations. So yeah, it's completely understandable why other heroes and characters find him hard to be around. Even people that do like him need a break. It's why characters who can stand him stand out so much. And of course, shipping. Spidey pool is huge, bigger than Cable pool, even after Deadpool 2. I need more Cable pool. Their team-up comic before they get divorced is everything, and they call it a divorce, that's not me doing it. Number 6, Booster Gold. Booster Gold has had quite the journey in comics, and is, confession time, one of my favorite heroes. For a time, he was my favorite. Also, Heroes in Crisis did him no favors, or that Batman arc, The Gift, but I blame Tom King for that, not my Booster. He first debuted in Booster Gold #1 back in 1986, and was from the future, the 25th century, so actually the same time as the Reverse Flash. Fun fact. Booster came back to the past to pretend to be a hero because his life was falling apart. He'd been caught throwing sports matches, so he was working as a security guard at a museum, where he teamed up with the security robot, stole a bunch of tech, and went back in time to be a hero. But his real goal was to get famous. Booster was in it for the money and the fame, and he wasn't shy about letting people know about it. This led many to dislike him, and his untrained nature meant he wasn't the best in a fight. And he drew in so much press to them, by always staying for interviews and actively clamoring for them. Yeah, Batman hated him at the start. But over time, Booster would come to take his responsibilities seriously, and get caught up in some serious time travel shenanigans, and learn that, well, he can't just do what he wants, and the fame isn't worth anything without the people you care about. Ted Kord's death messed him up. But then Rebirth. Rebirth Booster is not okay. He's more unstable, he's less responsible, and a bit back to being almost basic Booster. And also, the rest of the heroes don't like him too much again. Poor Booster, he's taken back to base so often, and whenever he gets adapted, it's always straight up 80s Booster. So yeah, depending upon the era, the hate for Booster 100% justified, especially by heroes with a very defined moral mission. Number 5. Raven. So Raven has a very specific complaint, usually by other teams, not the Teen Titans, though it does happen. And that's that she can't be trusted because of her father, Trigon, and how she is a conduit for him. And also, she has been overtaken by her dark half before, like the time she crashed Starfire and Dick's wedding and then made out with Starfire. Kelly talked about it in her scary Teen Titans facts list. Raven is an empath and has immense power. She is a powerful villain when she gives into her darker impulses. So it's understandable that certain heroes don't trust her, and if you go evil, well, I'd be cautious too. I'm with Batman, like not to that level of what if I had to kill all my teammates, but if you went evil once, it could happen again. Number 4. Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. You need to be specific, there have been multiple Captain Marvels, and Shazam was actually the first Captain Marvel. Go Billy! So Carol's introduction to the MCU was controversial, but we'll leave that aside for now and focus on comic Carol, Captain Marvel. So Carol became Captain Marvel in 2012. It was super recent in comic terms. Before that, she was Ms. Marvel. Her and Tony were friends. That matters in a minute, bear with me. When she became Captain Marvel, her character was changed slightly. She was made more aggressive and dominant, but the really big changes came during Civil War II. Listen, you don't come out of Civil War looking good. Just ask all the people from Civil War I. And Carol was pretty fascistic in Civil War II. She played the role Tony played in Civil War I, and people came out of that hating him. From commanding Ms. Marvel to set up essentially a teenage Gestapo, and also very much overstepping boundaries in the life of a girl who admires her to the point that she will lie to her parents and family so that she can patrol at night rather than do her homework. Also, she beats Tony into a coma, and this really gets people because Tony was on the upswing of liking him since the MCU revamp. So people liked Tony at that point. So yeah, it just wasn't a good look. But the thing is, in canon, just like the last Civil War, people just had to get over it. The thing is, Captain Marvel's a little different, and this is a bit more fan hate because most people in the Marvel universe got over it fast. A few bring it up now and again, but she has like post-Rebirth, his coming back to life rebirth, not DC Rebirth, Hal Jordan protection. This happens when writers want a character to do well, so they can't bring up things that have happened in the past, their mistakes. Captain Marvel has been rebooted numerous times, at this point multiple number ones in the span of 6 years. She's ended up becoming a controversial character, and some people stay away because they just don't want to deal with it. I really liked her past arc with Tony where he helped her overcome alcoholism, but those days are long gone. But he's over it, he calls her Care Bear now. It's okay, Care Bear, I don't mind that coma. Number 3. Reed Richards. If you've watched my videos for a while, you know that me and Reed, we have beef. I'm a closet Fantastic Four villain. But Reed has done a lot that has made many in the superhero community side-eye him. He was on the Illuminati, that secret team that was trying to preemptively stop threats. He was part of that Council of Reeds, which had far too many evil versions of him on it for my comfort. He has a cache of some of the most powerful items in the Marvel Universe. Well, had. There was the portal to the Negative Zone in the Baxter Building. He exposed the members of the Fantastic Four to the cosmic rays on purpose. He helped build that alternate dimension prison for heroes who wouldn't register during Civil War I. Him and the Fantastic Four were put on trial for all the things they've caused. But, and it's a big but, he has recently been turned into Nice Guy Reed. You know, after God Emperor Doom and seeing his whole family die. He's turned over a new leaf. Seeing the Maker, the 1610 Ultimate Verse Reed, who is now evil, helped with that too. But he is Reed. His inventions and genius are calling. When people side-eye him, I get it. Deserved. Number 2. Hal Jordan. I love Hal Jordan, this is no secret. I also wish he had stayed dead. That too is no secret. It's complex, I know. So Hal went rogue after the destruction of Coast City during the whole death rebirth of Superman in the 90s. He also grew Reed Richards' hair streaks, always a bad sign, ended up killing the Core and Sinestro, died in a quasi-redemption arc burning in the sun, then was the Spectre, then came back to life. The return was awesome. There was an emotion spectrum, eventually a Sinestro Core war, but here's the thing. If you still distrusted him, you got flack for it in universe. Batman is treated like he's being extra for not trusting Hal when he literally killed the whole Core. But what's happening with Hal these days? Well, he just destroyed the Core, again, after he tried to arrest God and punched him in the face, then killed an innocent man. Green Lantern is interesting right now. They're all gonna be Black Stars, and it's cause of Hal. Yeah, I can see them being pretty mad about that. Hate, justified. Again. Number 10. Galahad from Insufferable. Insufferable is a digital comic from 2012 written by Mark Waid that was meant to showcase the power of digital, that a comic could be digital only and flourish. This did not happen, and it actually did get a trade paperback release. And Insufferable Insufferable slipped under the radar for many people, and digital in general has plateaued. However, what was it about? Well, it was about a father and son dynamic duo team who had had a massive public falling out, wherein their secret identities were revealed. Galahad was fulfilling the role of Boy Wonder, and used the super identity reveal that he caused to catapult himself to social media fame. Galahad is big on the Twitter. He's on forums, he stays up late arguing with trolls, he lets his dad do the legwork solving crimes, shows up, takes a selfie, and claims he did all of it himself on social media, or at least that his dad is old and in the way. He sells merch and gets sponsorship deals, and as you can imagine, eventually he gets a Twitter mob turning against him. This is when he has just run into bad press, and also a bit of a stint of being an ineffectual hero. Galahad is a brat, more concerned with branding himself than stopping crime. For those who see through his facade and call him out, he does deserve some of the hate he gets. Most of it. He's low on the list because he's relatively harmless, more lame than anything else. Number 9. Crackerjack. We're heading back to Astro City. Yes, it's all happening. Crackerjack first appears in Astro City number 5, and it's instantly set up as a hero that others are annoyed with. Flamboyant and flashy, he loves to swoop into a situation and take all the credit, even though sometimes he's more of a hindrance than a help. The thing is, the public likes him. He's gregarious and charming, but behind the scenes it's said that, and I quote, he depends on luck, he is jealous of others, he does sloppy work, he steals credit for the achievements of others. Harsh. No one seems to know who Crackerjack really is. His superhero identity takes up much of his persona. His arc culminates in him being career-endingly injured in the process of teaming up with one of Astro City's enemies to attempt to bolster his failing body, as he was starting to age out of the hero business after being active for over 20 years. Teaming up with an enemy for one's own selfish reasons didn't endear him to all the heroes, though some did understand. He's still the same Ray he always was though, and is working to recover from his injuries with the help of Quarrel, who he still hasn't told his name to. So yeah, does he deserve the hate? Sorta. Kind of. Most of the time. Most of the time lands you at number 9. Number 8. Damian Wayne. Controversial, I know, and I can feel the keys. How dare you. Damian Wayne's the GOAT. Well, here's the thing. Damian Wayne ranges a lot based on how he's written, and in canon there are many who can't stand him, or have to put up with him in a kind of, oh, Damian, what a precocious child, calling women trollops and whores, belittling his father for his own rape, kidnapping Superboy, even though they become good friends, and that was a very cute comic. He takes his father's paranoia to a whole new level, and just in general is rude to everyone. Damian is not as hated as he would be by the other heroes because he is a child, so he gets a lot of leeway and the potential to grow out of it, which he sometimes does until a writer decides to take him back to base. Damian is constantly being forced to learn to get along with others, thanks to his upbringing with Raish and Talia and the League of Assassins. To say he's antisocial would be an understatement, though a lot of it does stem from a place of insecurity. Damian is constantly mean to those around him, no matter how much they help or go to the mat for him. They give him infinite chances though, but for those who give up and give in to the hate, it's not that undeserved. Yes, he's 13, I'm aware. All I'm saying is those futures where he turns out evil, I believe. Still, I hold out hope for good writers and nuanced portrayals. It happens. Let's just stay away from the Damian who tells his father to cover his drink. That's disgusting. Number 7. Emma Frost. Now, Emma Frost started off her comic career as a villain, first debuting in the Uncanny X-Men number 129 back in 1980. She was the White Queen of the Hellfire Club. She eventually would end up joining and leading the X-Men for a bit. Here's the thing, now the X-Men have a better track record at this than other teams, but villains, reformed or otherwise, can be a hard sell for everyone to trust. She is also just as devious as her other half can be. Her and Cyclops were well matched. She lied about how he died in order for the mutants to declare war on the Inhumans, and while her methods don't always line up with the rest of the X-Men, she even reassumed control of the Hellfire Club in order to fix mutant kind her own way. But now it's House of X, or as some are arguing House of 10, hashtag House of X. We'll see how things shake up. Emma is hated for the lies, for the lack of trust, and her willingness to go back to her old ways, and use people to her own end. I love Emma, but some of the hate deserved. Number 6. Omni-Man. We're heading over to Robert Kirkman's indie mega comic Invincible for this number. Omni-Man appears in the first issue of Invincible and is the father of the lead, Mark Grayson. Omni-Man is the Superman amalgam of this universe, the hero. He comes from another planet, heralding a mission of peace and prosperity. He married a human woman and had a son, is part of a league of heroes, and seeks to keep the world safe, or so it seemed. It turned out in a twist that occurred several issues in that Omni-Man had not been sent to improve the Earth but to conquer it. He bred with an Earth woman to create an heir and equal to help him in his conquest. And when it is revealed, he goes and kills most of the Earth's top tier heroes. This obviously turns the planet's population and the remaining heroes against him, including his own son, who would go on to have quite a complex relationship with him. So yeah, turning on the planet you claimed you were protecting, hate deserved. Number 5. Professor X. Professor X has veered quite widely from the character he was when he first debuted back in the X-Men #1 back in 1963. Since then, he has amassed a whole host of questionable actions. It's been revealed that he's repressed memories, hidden the sentience of the Danger Room, mind-wiped people like erasing Magneto and creating Onslaught through the activation of the dark portions of his mind, being part of secret clandestine dealings. Over the years, a lot of his students or allies have come to hate him because of the lies and breaches in trust, compounded by the image he presents of himself, which can come across to some people as holier than thou. Xavier now goes by X, as he is Charles's mind and Phantom X's body. This is following some Shadow King shenanigans. Honestly, these betrayals cut deep, and for those who do hate him, it makes sense. No judgment here. Number 4. The Homelander. That's right, the boys. So this applies to comic Homelander and TV series Homelander, who both abuse their power quite a bit in different ways, but heinous ones. The Homelander is an arrogant, self-centered, false hero. He is manipulative, and for those who know who he really is, the hate is deserved. To find out, your heroes are sexual predators, murderers, cold, calculating cynics more interested in making a profit than helping, are untrained and regularly cause deaths because, well, yeah, that's a lot of reasons to hate. And maybe for some to form some kind of secret team to keep an eye on them. The Homelander may be a bit more sympathetic in the series, a tiny bit, just a smidge, but he still deserves most of the hate he gets. Pretty much all of it. Number 3. Cyclops. So a lot of you are quite salty that Cyclops wasn't on part 1, like it was a travesty. So Cyclops, what a journey. Now I like Cyclops, but he is a jerk. But that's part of what makes him interesting, to me at least. Cyclops was one of the original members of the X-Men and the de facto leader for a lot of the points of the team's history. Here's the thing, Cyclops takes an antagonistic approach to leadership. The person you set yourself up against a lot of times rather than the person you are inspired by. This results in him oftentimes being cold and not that empathetic. Add to that his rigidness and desire to please authority figures, and he has a lot of traits people dislike in real life, and it also comes across in the comics. Then as it went on, Cyclops, oh boy, he's gotten pretty dictatorial and sanctioned all kinds of things, is willing to separate kids from parents, and on the whole has just become someone you need to walk on eggshells around. There's a baseline of Cyclops from lots of people within the Marvel universe, and as much as I like him, it makes complete sense. But you need characters like that, it's an interesting contrast. You're definitely not gonna forget Cyclops anytime soon. The fictional world needs a jerk or two. Number 2. Batman. Now I love Batman, many people do, but in universe he has his detractors, especially modern post-identity crisis Batman, which is when canonically you started to see a real shift towards paranoid contingency plan Batman. There have been numerous plots about Batman having a plan to take down his allies. Most notable is Tower of Babel. Everyone else here on staff says Babel, and now I live in a world of uncertainty. Batman is tracking people, friend and foe alike. He will go out of his way to defend his enemies, even the Joker, and this has not endeared him to people. Such as the plot where Batman argued that the Joker shouldn't be executed. How do you think Commissioner Gordon felt about that? Let's not even visit Jason. He's at home flipping a table. Even Nightwing hated him for a while after he fired him from being Robin and replaced him very quickly after with Jason. Guy hates him, one punch and all that. To some of his allies, he's an uptight, paranoid stick in the mud, and they worry that one day he could snap, which he also has a contingency plan for. Batman is complicated, but I'm a sucker for him. What can I say? Give me all the Bat Dad. I'm basic. It's fine. Where's my pumpkin spice? Don't get triggered. Enough of us love Batman to make up for the people in canon who hate him. Number 1. The Plutonian. We're going indie for number 1. We're looking at Irredeemable, an entire series dealing with the breakdown of this title hero. The Plutonian is a dark look at what could have been if Superman had not had the temperament to be a hero, coupled with a series of unfortunate events happening to him, such as revealing his secret identity to his lady love only for her to reject him and spread his identity to the whole world, destroying his life and forcing him even further into isolation. The Plutonian ends up going on a killing spree, destroying the world's heroes and innocents alike. In fact, the title is a hint to the fact that he has become irredeemable. While they do a good job exploring how this all happened, for those who hate Plutonian, it makes perfect sense. He's terrifying. Superhearing was a part of all this. I warned you all about the superhearing.
Number 10. Black Widow. Okay, so obviously I love Natasha, but there are some pretty terrible things that she has done, especially the ultimate version of her, and for that her character deserves some hate. Or maybe Mark Miller, who created the Marvel Ultimate Universe, deserves some hate, but regardless, someone definitely deserves some hate. Natasha has been known to use her feminine wiles to get her way and manipulate people only to betray them, but she usually does so for the greater good. In the Ultimate series, however, we see her get close to Tony only to betray him and the United States. And when Tony is genuinely surprised surprised by this, as I think we all kind of were. She asks him what he expected, as she is after all a Russian spy. Wow, I mean, someone deserves the hate for the way her character is presented at least. Seriously, Natasha? Why though? She also kills Jarvis in this series. Oh, and her and Tony have a sex tape. Oh, ultimates. Number 9, Jason Todd. So in my mind, all Robins have deserved some hate at some point. They all have a bit of a brattiness to them that just makes you want to hate them. Jason Todd included. Well, he has now been redeemed in many fans' eyes when he went off to do his own thing as the Red Hood. He was previously disliked by fans. He only originally died in the comics because so many called into DC to vote him killed, after DC left a statement at the back of the comics, letting readers know that his fate would be left in their hands. After he was resurrected, he did the same thing a lot of Robins have done that royally bothers Batman, threatened to kill people, and then actually killed some people. Granted, his focus was to kill Gotham's criminals, but this still has never set well with Batman. And he really hates when his Robins can't follow the Bat family code of not killing. It's so easy, guys, just don't kill. Jason even tried to become the Bat in Bruce's absence, and did such a dreadful job that the Robins had to fight him to take it back. Everyone knows that job belonged to Dick Grayson. Number 8, Midnighter. Midnighter is violent to a fault. His abilities allow him to see the outcome of situations, which he could use to avoid violence and resolve things as neatly and cleanly as possible. However, while he uses his precognitive abilities to win a fight, he actually immensely enjoys violence, which means sometimes he'll drag out that fight. If you think I'm exaggerating, you should check out his Grindr profile in the comics. Yikes. His gratuitous violence is part of the reason why he deserves the hate, unless you are really into that sort of thing, and then maybe to you he just deserves more love. The hero out of DC's Wildstorm universe was once married to his teammate Apollo. While we were sad to see the gay couple's marriage dissolve, it seems fair given how much of a jerk Midnighter is. In the comics, we even see a time where he walks out on Apollo after declaring he already knows how this fight is going to end. Not even trying for a resolution? Talk about undervaluing your relationship. Number 7, Captain Ultra. Captain Ultra may have been lurking in the background, but that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve some hate too. The only reason he is ranked so low on this list actually is because he is a background character. Other than the fact that he has amazing powers, everything else about him kinda makes the reader and the characters want to hate him. He is often presented as being cocky and arrogant as a hero. His costume is also pretty heinous. Beyond that, even other heroes in the comics tend to try and distance themselves from him. They usually aren't perceived as liking him too much. He initially lays claim to Hellcat when he meets her because he's attracted to her, as though she is some kind of object that, he could lay claim to. And he attacks the Avengers. Sure, he's part of Wonder Man's Revengers at the time, so it comes as no surprise, but his reason for joining the team is because he was jealous of the Avenger team and held a grudge against them after they denied him membership. Basically, Captain Ultra is an overpowered whiny baby. I hate whiny babies. Just kidding. Babies are fine. Number 6, Superior Spider-Man. Some people have expressed that Spider-Man gets hate from other Marvel heroes and that he gets some audience hate for his love life. While I would agree that this can be a bit of an issue for the web-slinger Peter Parker, I don't think any version of Spider-Man has ever seen or deserved as much hate as Superior Spider-Man. Some may want to argue that Doc Ock's version of Spider-Man can't be seen as a hero due to the fact that Doc Ock himself is so villainous, but I would argue that Superior Spider-Man represents a merging of the two minds, and that his goal was to be a better hero than Spider-Man himself. Well, that and, avoid dying. From trapping Peter Parker's consciousness in his dying body, to the violent ways he decides to dole out justice, Superior Spider-Man has received a lot of internal and external hate for his behavior. Beyond that, he pridefully boasted that he was the best Spider-Man, but then could not even stop the Green Goblin. Also, he deserves some hate for punching Black Cat and knocking out one of her teeth. Number 5, Iron Man. Well, we may all love Tony Stark today due to Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of him in the MCU. Let's be honest, Robert Downey Jr. is basically Iron Man. We also have to acknowledge some of his history, and it is some of his past choices that haven't always made him quite so loved by fans and fellow Avengers teammates. Let's go to one of my favorite events to lovingly hate, The Crossing. In this event, Tony was the bad guy after we found out that he was working for Kang the entire time. The Hail Hydra scenario before that was a thing. Either way, equally awful. His involvement in the storyline was also kind of beyond bizarre. What's worse is that this isn't the only time Tony's been presented as the bad guy. Nope. Let's not forget the events of Civil War, where he played Captain Marvel's role a la Civil War II, being the bad guy guy who sought to control and restrict all supers. He was also quite villainous in the events of Superior Iron Man, which explored a reality where evil Tony was able to shield himself from Scarlet Witch's spell to undo the weird superhero supervillain persona reversal that she had actually caused. He did a thing that any millennial would condemn him for: offered people a free app. But the app wasn't really free. It was just a trial period. And after it became crazy popular, it was an app after all that allowed you to, change your appearance, and the trial period had ended, it charged people $99.99 a day to keep using it. No! Number 4. Captain America. You didn't think I was going to let Cap off that easy though, did you? Just because he was the good guy in Civil War when he went up against Tony doesn't mean that he's particularly any better when it comes to his dastardly deeds. Cap, after all, has had his own fair share of hate tossed his way by characters in the comics. And outside of the comics, he does occasionally get labeled as a safe or boring character. And while I see that, I don't tend to find it particularly problematic for him, as the things people hate him for seem so ingrained in his being. Ignoring the whole Hail Hydra event, there are still plenty of deeds that have made other heroes condemn Cap in the comics. Let's take a look at some of them, shall we? In the events of Civil War II, he concocted a plot to kill Hulk, to protect the Earth from a simple potential future. In Civil War I, he severely beat up Frank Castle, who refused to fight back after the Punisher killed 2 villains. What makes that really awful is that Frank refused to even take a swing at Cap, and rather than throw a few punches and just call it quits, Cap decides to beat him to a pulp. And then within the wheelhouse of Hydra-related evil deeds, he also killed his BFF Bucky. No! Number 3. Punisher. What's worse than killing a few X-Men? How about killing all of the mutants, including the Brotherhood, with a nuke, while pitting them against one another? That's just straight up cold. This happens in the one-shot Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe. That's right, if you thought Deadpool was bad, Punisher was killing the Marvel Universe before it was cool, in the mid-90s. Beyond this, Punisher has also been a character who has gotten a lot of hate as a result of him being too violent. He's often seen as a character that represents an obsession with violence and the belief of an eye for an eye. I won't lie, I do feel bad for Frank Castle, but what he stands for as a hero in light of the issues we face in the real world modern day make him problematic, and definitely deserving of at least some hate. Number 2. Superman. There are almost as many reasons to love Superman as there are to hate him. One thing his character suffers from is the goody two-shoes syndrome, similarly to Captain America. That is to say, he's kind of boring, good to a fault, predictable. Except for when he is not and is a complete jerk for no reason. Don't believe me? If you go back to the 50s and 70s in the comics, Superman really wasn't that great of a guy at all. Sure, he saved the world, but he also adopted Jimmy Olsen only to criticize and torment him. Granted, we later find out that because he'd heard a prophecy that harm would come to his son, but rather than tell Jimmy this, he simply is a jerk to Jimmy until Jimmy decides he no longer wants to be Superman's son. And sure, that was for a somewhat noble cause, but what about all the times he's tormented Lois Lane? There's a time in the Superman's Girlfriend Lois Lane series where he actually breaks up with Lois just to elicit and capture an emotional response from her, so he can prove to a film director that she should play herself in a movie about Superman's life. Wow. And let's not forget what the alternate storyline Superman Red Son teaches us about Superman's potential for evil and red fascism. Yeesh. Number 1. Hank Pym. You asked for him on part 1, you asked for him on part 2, and I heard your cries of injustice. Many of you have brought up that he beat his wife, Janet, which is also hugely problematic and reason for fans to hate him. This happened in the original Avengers series and resulted in him being kicked out of the Avengers, and Janet deciding to divorce him. As strange as it sounds, this altercation actually seems like nothing when compared with what the ultimate version of Hank did to his wife. After getting in an argument, the Wasp shrinks down to get away from him, and he assaults her with bug spray. While she coughs up toxic fumes, he also sicks an ant army on her. This fight in the Ultimate series was even worse and left Janet hospitalized, leaving Hank hated by readers and by characters in the comics. Number 9. Cypher. I know I've even poked fun at Cypher's abilities myself before, but to be fair to the mutant translator, his powers have been taken to a new level since his resurrection in the comics. When he was originally introduced, he was simply painted as a character who could help avoid conflict through conversation and understanding. Some brush this off as being kind of boring. But in the world we live in now, where the idea of a nuclear war terrifies just about everyone, the power of being able to understand and communicate with someone, of being able to resolve issues with words and resolve conflicts is a praised one. Although being able to understand any language seems like an easy feat to accomplish in a world where we have the internet and we can study and learn languages relatively simply, Cypher's powers now transcend that. Since his resurrection, his perception of the entire world has become language. He even tried to decode the internet and can better understand machines as a result of his new heightened sense of understanding and awareness. You may think this sounds like a coder. But the reason why Cypher deserves your love, not hate, boils down to how he understands all languages and code subconsciously. Where others work to translate or understand, he just does. Number 8. Squirrel Girl. Despite often being made fun of, Squirrel Girl still manages to be one of the most loved characters. Hate gets tossed her way because her powers are considered to be, subpar. She is known for her tail, ability to climb, communicate with squirrels, and strong jaw. Yeah, I get it. If one of your superpowers is that you can bite things real hard, it's hard for people to feel like you are that amazing. But Squirrel Girl is also super strong, and what she may lack in abilities, she makes up for with heart and cuteness, and ingenuity. And despite her powers being kind of weird, she always seems to use that ingenuity and her smarts to defeat a slew of supervillains. She was even offered a position at S.H.I.E.L.D. If anything, Squirrel Girl would make an awesome D&D player. She definitely knows how to utilize the abilities she does have. Number 6. Hawkeye. A lot of people like to hate on Hawkeye because he's kind of just a normal guy when it comes to his abilities. Like, is being a crack shot really a superpower or just a super skill? Or maybe it's because he's kind of boring, or because he's kind of just a less impressive and lamer version of Marvel villain Bullseye. But regardless of how you feel about him, he definitely does not deserve the hate. He may even have superpowers, who knows? He was for some reason susceptible to the effects of the power drainer in the new Avengers after all. What's up with that? Hawkeye deserves some respect for being powerful enough to garner superhero status and Avenger status without even having any powers. Not only that, but he has got to be one of the bravest Avengers. Remember that time he used himself as an arrow in Avenger Volume 1 issue 502 to save the rest of the team and take out a Kree mothership? Whew, talk about a crack shot. Number 5. Dazzler. Some may think Alison Blair's powers are kinda silly, in and of that they are basically turning her into a music-absorbing disco ball. But when utilized properly, her powers can also be insanely strong, which means that all the hate she gets just for shining so bright and being so glamorous is unwarranted. Dazzler was actually written in as a core team member for the X-Men when she made her debut in the Uncanny X-Men issue 130 in 1980. And only a few years ago from now, in the Astonishing X-Men series Volume 4, her fantastical sound-related powers have let her stand up to such enemies as the nanotech-controlled Banshee, absorbing and using the sonic scream of her possessed teammate to take down 2 Reaver-controlled Sentinels. Dang. Not only that, but Dazzler has also proved that she was cool enough to have her own self-titled comic book series. Yeah, which actually lasted 42 issues. If you want to see how tough she is, give it a read. In issue 32, she even takes in Black Bolt's insanely destructive voice like it's nothing. Number 4. Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers. When Ms. Marvel was promoted to Captain Marvel in 2012, it created some pretty big waves in the comic book world. A lot of people had loved Carol Danvers as Ms. Marvel and were loath to see her adopt the mantle of her then dead friend, hero, and sometimes romantic partner, Captain Marvel of the Kree race. Not only that, but a lot of people detested the costume and hair change. She went from this to this. Beyond that, the MCU introduction to Carol Danvers decided to skip right past her history as Ms. Marvel and decided to introduce her as Captain Marvel. The film also dealt with people criticizing the film's and lead actress playing Carol, Brie Larson's, social justice warrior undertones. But regardless of your political thoughts or your opinions on fashion, Captain Marvel has definitely earned the respect and love she's garnered from dedicated fans. She has been a core part of the Avengers team in the comics since the 1970s. She's proven herself time and time again as a strong leader on the team, especially during the Skrull invasion storyline. She was instrumental in the first Marvel Civil War story, fighting on Iron Man's side, and later went on to be a lead player in Civil War 2, which saw her take up arms against her old friend Iron Man, and she even won. Well, sort of. Number 3. Jubilee. First thoughts when it comes to X-Men's Jubilee may revolve around the 90s cartoon, as a helpless young X-Men not really in control of her powers, who mostly shoots off little fireworks. Because of these initial thoughts, a lot of people dismiss Jubilee, remarking on her as having lame or insignificant powers, and even are annoyed by her. But what people seem to forget is how fun and silly of a character she can be, and even underneath all that teen angst, how integral she can be to the storytelling side of the X-Men. She's resourceful. In the comics, she found a way to survive and live in a mall by using her powers as party tricks, probably why they are often presented as being stuck in a low-level gear. She's instrumental. She actually used her powers to defeat a group of Reavers and save Wolverine's life, and later sort of became his sidekick. Her powers are stronger than you think as well. Emma Frost has referred to her untapped potential, explaining that she could detonate matter at a subatomic level. In other words, she could create the effects of a nuclear fusion bomb. And she said that Jubilee was one of the most powerful mutants that she had ever met. What? Number 2. Storm. Yeah, I bet you're wondering why I'm going here. I mean, who hates Storm? Well, before she was considered a potential Omega level mutant, many people always thought that Storm's powers were somewhat lackluster. I know, most people when they think of Storm, they just think of localized weather. She can create a storm, sure, but not like threaten the planet. And there, you'd be wrong. There was a time in the comics where she was under so much stress that as a result, she was able to tap into the full potential of her powers. In other words, she created a global level storm that threatened the entire planet. She was even compared to the Phoenix Force at the time in terms of power levels. Fortunately, her teammates were able to calm her down, but that story served to prove that Storm really is on a goddess level.
Number 10. Black Widow and the Invisible Woman. Starting off our list with something new and mild from the Invisible Woman solo series. This recasts her past as a secret agent. So before she married Reed, she worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. and ran covert ops, which with her power set actually makes a lot of sense. The story thus far is that her past partner has gone missing and she's gonna break all the rules to go behind enemy lines to find him. This involves her teaming up with Black Widow, who suddenly has a massive chip on her shoulder about superheroes. So Sue has to prove herself to her. She has to prove that she's not like other superheroes. Natasha, are you okay? You've been on so many superhero teams. I know you're a clone, but you have all the memories of the other Nat, who Hydra Cap killed. So these two just have beef until Sue proves herself to her by faking a drinking contest. So it's low, because it's not full hate or sustained, but it's odd. This is a 5-issue mini, by the way. It's pretty good. Check it out if you have the time. This is manufactured conflict. Manufactured conflict is manufactured. Does Nat not remember the time Sue fought the entire Avengers team to a standstill after the government took her kids and forced them out of the Baxter building? Reed's just noped out of that. He knows better than to try and stop an angry Sue. Number 9. Hal Jordan and Batman. So Green Lantern and Batman, since they started teaming up in the late Silver Age, Brave and the Bold, there has been friction. Batman has never fully appreciated Hal's attitude, which ranges from cavalier to I'm doing exactly what the Guardians tell me. But this really came to a head when Hal went evil. And also there's some beef from Hal's side from the time he was desperate enough to go to Bruce for help with his alcoholism and just got turned away. Post-Parallax, Bruce wanted nothing to do with Spectre Hal and didn't trust him at all. And when he came back to life, he still didn't trust him and then got extra mad because everybody judged him for it. But honestly, he had good reason. Just because all the people you killed came back to life doesn't mean you didn't kill them in the first place. Eventually, these two would find an even keel through an, in my opinion, contrived sequence where Bruce couldn't handle a power ring despite having wielded one multiple times before. All of this ended up being shifted more into frenemy mode in the New 52, where all of a sudden these two were all about each other. Bruce revealed his identity on purpose to Hal first, he lets Hal fly him places. I don't know, I have questions. I noticed notice things. Other people are like, oh, where's Darkseid? And I'm like, is Hal's hand around Bruce's waist? Enhance image. No shame in my game. We all make our own fun. Number 8. Hawkman and Green Arrow. So Carter Hall and Oliver Queen hate each other for the same reason that Hal and Ollie should hate each other, but the comics insist they don't. A fundamental difference of opinion. Green Arrow leans really left, to the point where he just yells at Hal, for example, for being a space cop and for listening to the Guardians, ever. He just yells at him and calls him stupid and a stick in the mud, all kinds of things, but they're best friends? Like, what is going on with Hal's self-esteem? You don't have to take that. Anyway, Hawkman leans more right. These terminologies are stateside ones, by the way. These terms mean different things depending upon where you are in the world. So these two butt heads, or they did pre-Flashpoint. Post-Flashpoint in the New 52, except we mostly forget this was a thing. These two used to have some huge blow-up arguments. It's mostly been forgotten because of the struggle of what do we do with these characters in the first place. Just never forget, Oliver Queen will scream in your face if you have a different opinion than him on social issues, but when push comes to shove and he finds out his ward is a drug addict, he will slap him across the face and kick him out. So, all talk, huh? Number 7. Jean Grey and Emma Frost. This comes to us from New X-Men, the Grant Morrison run. And the genesis of this one, we've talked about it numerous times at this point. Jean and Cyclops were having problems. Emma, fresh off surviving the Genoshan genocide, started giving him psychic therapy. During this point, the two started having a psychic affair, an affair where she would masquerade as Jean as the Phoenix. It was all kinda messed up. So when Jean found out about all this, she was understandably upset. Less understandably, she psychically tortured Emma because of it. When Jean lets her powers go, she's terrifying. Full stop. Anybody who questions how she uses them has a long history to call back upon. This conflict would be solved through plot convenience. Jean would just kinda become the Phoenix and poof away. Now that description will bother some people who really felt the gravitas of her sacrifice, but different strokes for different folks. Maybe I'm Zorn. I was Zorn the whole time. Who wasn't Zorn but was Zorn. Number 6. Captain Marvel and Iron Man. This is Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel, who is currently having a villain arc in the comics at the time of this recording. A purposeful one, not one by accident. And it's a good play. Lean into it. Play with it, that's smart marketing. Anyway, despite years of friendship, her and Tony fell through over Minority Report. I mean, an Inhuman, Ulysses, who could tell the future. And when Rhodey died as a driving plot force, he was dating Carol at the time, it was on. She felt she could have prevented it if she knew the future. Tony was all, I don't agree. Also, I was the antagonist in the last Civil War. It's not a good look, don't do it. She was all, screw you. I'm starting a teenage Gestapo and getting several people killed. Get ready to be beaten into a coma, Care Bear. He calls her Care Bear, so I'm flipping it back. Yeah, this was intense. The Civil War arcs go hard. You go from fighting alongside someone to contemplating murdering them. However, unlike the first Civil War, they scrambled to undo any lasting character damage, so Tony just got over it. I built myself a new body, it's fine. Number 5. Namor and Black Panther. Two kings fighting over whose kingdom is better and who should have mastery. Also, they just really clash personality-wise. It takes a decent amount of ego to rule, and T'Challa handles his with more grace than Namor, who can at times fall into megalomania and just slips into straight-up villainy sometimes too. Still, these two can also respect each other. You can make their relationship fairly malleable. But well, they've fought for decades, and fans have a very let them fight mentality, alongside a who would win. Black Panther stabbed Namor that one time. Namor's been killed a few times actually. Beheaded by Hyperion once. Ouch. Number 4. Batman and the Red Hood. So this is a more one-sided hate, as when Jason Todd came back to life, Batman's feelings were very conflicted, but Jason had had years to nurse his hate, a festering rage that had started long before he died, exacerbated by seeing that his death had changed nothing in Bruce's methods, that he'd been replaced by another Robin, that the Joker still lived. Red Hood was more than happy to kill to accomplish what he felt Batman could not, and go up against the rest of the Bat family. It made him dangerous, as did the fact that Bruce still cared about him. Batman doesn't do feelings the best though, so the anger eventually manifested mutually. These days Jason is in more of a black sheep capacity, but these two still aren't good. Batman backhanded him that one time in Rebirth. Just why do people keep having him do that? Stop it. Number 3. Hawkeye and the Swordsman. Yeah, classic beef. So Hawkeye was a villain before he eventually had a change of heart. Now the Swordsman actually started off as a villain for Hawkeye. He had actually trained Hawkeye when the two were both villains. At that point he was called Trickshot, which is a better name. So when the Swordsman wanted to join the Avengers, obviously Clint didn't trust him and kept a close eye on him, which led to him being denied entry, which then led to him kidnapping Captain America. So yeah, hate justified. The Swordsman has been on the Avengers since though, so I guess he got what he wanted. Number 2. Reed Richards and and Thor. So this occurred during the first Civil War, Civil War I. Thor was dead at this point, and so the pro-registration side felt that they needed something on their side, a big heavy hitter, some brawn. They needed some muscle. The Hulk was in space, kept there by them. This is leading up to Planet Hulk. So Reed thought, what if we just clone Thor? I have the tech, I have the DNA, I can do anything really. And Tony was like, yeah, go for it. This is why we're such good friends. Needless to say, when Thor found out about all this, he wasn't happy. He was furious. This messed up their relationship for a while, and justifiably so. Stop cloning people. Most people don't want to be cloned. Bad blood. Also, Thor didn't even want to be on that side, so double blow. Civil War. What a time. Both times. I can't wait for Civil War 3. Number 1. She-Hulk and Star Fox. So She-Hulk hates Star Fox for a couple of reasons, like influencing her emotions and making her believe she was in love with John Jameson, Werewolf Jameson, and so she married him. She found this out while she was trying to discover if Star Fox had used his powers on her to make her sleep with him. This was while she was defending him for his other rapes that he had committed canonically because Thanos implanted memories in him that made him doubt himself, but not even the real Thanos. It was not the strongest plot. Jen is justifiably angry about all of this, but also at herself because he didn't influence her in the defending of him or the sleeping with him department. She changed her whole life after finding out about her and John though. She divorced John. It hurt how she could perceive her own thoughts. I hate him too. Cupid powers showcased in the grossest way. This is the plot that for many ruins Star Fox, while others are like, it's the writer's fault, not Star Fox. Share your thoughts. Number 10. Wonder Woman and Spider-Man. No, I didn't fall and hit my head, nor am I just some fake nerd girl noob. These two met in the sequel, spiritual sequel to Spider-Man and Superman's first team-up. In their first team-up, they fought Lex Luthor and Doc Ock, who had kidnapped their ladies and also were planning to blow up the Earth. So this first team-up was Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man, and the sequel is just Superman and Spider-Man. Just them hanging out. It was bigger with more heroes and Doctor Doom flaunting his diplomatic immunity. However, at one point during this, Spider-Man ended up meeting Wonder Woman and basically his brain melted and he went va-va-voom, so much woman, and just hit on her constantly. Meanwhile, she had bought into the media hype by the Bugle that he was essentially a supervillain. And so the two fought, but they sorted it out quickly. He still hits on her for the rest of it though. I can imagine Wonder Woman being one of the many heroes who find Spider-Man annoying. So this is low, cause the hate was brief, bright, and then over. Mostly I just wanted to tell you this happened. It's one of my fave crossovers, mostly because Doom and Superman have a really deep conversation about the responsibilities about walking the earth as essentially a god. Friends, who knew? Number 9. Bishop and Gambit. So Bishop was really convinced for a time that Gambit was the traitor he was looking for who had betrayed the X-Men and led to their downfall and hence the dystopian future that he came from. So why did he think this? Well, Bishop was born and raised in this future and he was taken in by a man named LeBeau, which we know to be Gambit, Remy's last name. The man who raised him was also known as the Witness, the last person to have seen the X-Men alive. Later, Bishop would come across a recording of Jean Grey, who said the X-Men had been destroyed by a traitor on the inside, which led him to suspect the Witness. When he traveled back in time and met the X-Men, he came to believe that Gambit was a younger version of the Witness and fought him, and proceeded to attempt to warn anyone who would listen about him, and also just give him side-eye constantly. Gambit of course responded in kind. No one likes being accused of potential future crimes. You hear that, Carol? No one. It would later come out that Gambit was not a traitor, so these two would squash their beef. Number 8. Guy Gardner and Fire. This occurred during their time on the JLI, the Justice League International. So Guy used to be really nice, up until he received brain damage fighting Sinestro. When the writers brought him back, they felt they had to do something to cure what they called his terminal blandness, which is harsh. So they gave him a brash, rude new tooth. But since it was the result of brain damage by comic logic, if he got conked on the head again, it could just be reversed. And that's what happened. Then him and Ice, the best friend of Fire, started going out. Best friend in quotes, there's some hints there about other things going on. However, when he reverted back to his now established Guy ways, she wasn't into that. But she felt that she had seen the true man and hence was motivated to stay with him, even though he frequently embarrassed her or made her uncomfortable. This made Fire not like Guy very much at all. And while he didn't appreciate her butting into his relationship, this would all be solved, including the eventual Superman Guy Ice triangle, by Ice dying. That's one way to end a feud. The writers would later go on to say that her death was a mistake, an attempt at drama that fell flat. Number 7. Black Widow and Black Widow. Well, when most think of Black Widow, they think think of Natasha Romanoff, there is another. This second Black Widow is Yelena Belova. While she and Nat would become allies, they started off as actual enemies. Both of them were raised and trained in the Red Room, and Yelena felt that she was the one who should hold the title of Black Widow, not Natasha. Nat would eventually have to use manipulation to make Yelena see that being the Black Widow was not this amazing pinnacle to aspire to. These two would, as I said, eventually get along, but it was a really rocky start, with Yelena viewing Natasha as a traitor, and the latter seeing the former as deluded. I'm gonna introduce Yelena to the MCU, so I have a question. How many of you are Yelena fans, or even knew about her? Small random test sample survey, go. Number 6, Storm and Emma Frost. Emma and Storm have beef, and Storm gets along with Doom, so that's saying something. Although, is it? Lots of people get along with Doom. Doctor Strange stayed at his castle with him when they went to rescue Doom's mom, and they had a nice time, at least it seemed like it. They had a nice dinner. I want to have dinner with Doom. So when Emma was the White Queen of the Hellfire Club, she tortured Storm, trying to force information from her mind. Emma even pulled the, I don't want to hurt you, I want us to be friends. So obviously, when Emma joined the team and would later rise to a role of leadership within it, a role that Storm has herself occupied at points, the best points in my opinion, she would clash with Storm. Also, Emma gives her grief for being royal and is all, Your Highness? You were the White Queen of a supervillain club. These two have fought multiple times and Emma has lost. So you can write these two as cordial, but I don't know, I like their kind of drama. A little friction is fun, not everyone should get along perfectly. It's okay for some characters to not let everything go. Number 5, the Hulk and the Thing, halfway through with a classic battle. Many fans will remember these big brawls between the Hulk and the Thing. Fun fact, the Hulk was actually inspired by the success of the Thing in the Fantastic Four. Fans very much have a let them fight mentality. The Hulk freaks Ben out. Classic Hulk, that is, with how brainless and mindless he is. It's like looking into an uncomfortable funhouse mirror, because they are so similar. Early Hulk hated most people, Hulk smash and all that. But these two would eventually become friends, and it's sweet. Ben needs more friends. Friends who don't turn him into rock monsters. It's understandable why people still think they hate each other though. They just fought again the other day in a fight that made me cringe for the Thing. He got so hurt and it looked so painful. The rock part came off and it exposed his fleshy underbelly. This looked really painful. Number 4, Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost. Yes, Emma made the list twice. Look, a lot of people have problems with her. Take it up with them. This is again because of Emma's time as a villain. Kitty met her for the first time when she was young and Emma had imprisoned them, and she never forgot it and hasn't really forgiven. Kitty finds Emma to be cold, cruel, and manipulative and doesn't trust her. She's made sure that she can best her, and Emma is a little afraid of her. I mean, you should be afraid of someone who hates you so passionately and openly. But sometimes Emma has proved her right. On Emma's side, she's a bit colder about it, but it's hard to like someone who hates you and makes such a loud show of it, also rips your heart out. Their fights are really cool though. Phasing fights are always great, and then you add a psychic element to that and you've got a great matchup. Number 3, the Punisher and Batman. Yes, another crossover. The Punisher and Batman have met, teamed up, and hated almost every second of it, and I'm pretty sure you can guess why. They pretty much have the polar opposite philosophies when it comes to how to handle crime. Punisher's is, well, bullet to the head, and Batman's is reformation. Take them to Arkham. They can all be saved. I won't become what they are. This all came to a head when Batman actually saved the Joker from Punisher. He got in between them, between the Punisher, the gun, and Joker, and then told the Joker to run for his life. Frank fights him for a bit at first, but then just becomes so disgusted with him that he tells him that him and the Joker deserve each other and just leaves. Ouch. Batman on his side thinks the Punisher is unhinged and belongs in Arkham. Punisher/Batman Deadly Nights was a good read. Number 2, The Darkness and Witchblade. Yes, we're leaving Marvel and DC for a moment. I know it's a September 26th miracle. I filmed it that day. What kind of miracle is it? Whenever you're watching it, it's that day's miracle. So the Witchblade is actually conceived as the result of a truce liaison between the Darkness, a cosmic entity, and Angelus, the embodiment of God's light, whom the Darkness resents for bringing life into the empty chaos that had been its domain. The Darkness would begin inhabiting human hosts as time went on, passing itself down through a chosen bloodline, always male. He would still bear the grudge against Angelus and manifest that in his attitude to those who wielded the Witchblade. Their confrontations are violent, dangerous, and at times oddly sexual, because Witchblade is, if you've seen Witchblades, it's a lot. It's an intriguing relationship that will span all of time, played out through human hosts. Number 1, Cyclops and Wolverine. All of you from part 1 were like, Sasha, Cyclops and Wolverine hate each other? Everyone knows this. And yes, they do. But they were on rivalries. But yes, this has crossed the line into hate on more than one occasion, and is part of what people know about them, so they deserve to be on here too. How do they hate each other? Let me count the ways. They were fighting over the same woman, yes, but that's only part of it. A small part. They have fundamentally different personalities personalities, and even with her gone, they still fight with each other. Scott is uptight and wound so tight he could snap, and he does sometimes. He leads through countermeasures, so oftentimes as an opposing force rather than an inspiring one. He kowtows to authority and loves rules and order. Wolverine is a much more free agent, driven by passion, thumbing his nose at authority, and is softer than he would first appear on the surface. He also feels that Scott is a bit of a hypocrite. This is cause when push comes to shove, Cyclops is usually pretty happy to let Wolverine do the things that he can't. Here's the thing, these two can also be friends. It's a weird dynamic where just a few things would need to shift and they'd be a terrifying, unstoppable duo. So it's probably a good thing most of the time that they can't see their way clear to that.